Committee will come to order. Today we continue our posture hearings with Indo-Pacific and U.S. Forces Korea. As we meet, adversaries are deepening their cooperation. China, Russia, and Iran, North Korea are working together to challenge the United States. Recent reports of China and Russia's support for Iran during Operation Epic Fury are just the latest example of this cooperation. In this threat environment, President Trump was right to commit a historic $1.5 trillion defense budget. This investment is essential to rebuild our military and ensure peace through strength. I look forward to working with President Trump and Secretary Hegseth to get it enacted. In particular, this investment is critical to addressing our most pressing challenge, that is deterring China in the Indo-Pacific. Under Xi Jinping, China is pursuing a historic military buildup. It now fills the world's leading hypersonic missile arsenal. The PLA is on track to exceed 1,000 nuclear warheads by 2030. China is the world's preeminent shipbuilding nation, and its growing arsenal of conventional long-range strike, cyber, and space capabilities increasingly puts not only the U.S. interest in the region at risk, but also the U.S. homeland. And China is not just building capability, it's demonstrating intent. In a December exercise, the PLA encircled Taiwan and rehearsed operations to isolate and seize the island. To ensure the department can deter China through strength, we must improve integrated air and missile defense systems, including Guam defense system, scale production of innovation, low-cost munitions, and attritable unmanned systems, replenish our munition stockpiles, especially long-range fires, and rebuild and modernize U.S. shipbuilding. Moreover, we need a strong network of alliances and partnerships. Fortunately, Japan, South Korea, and the Philippines, and Australia are increasing their defense spending and providing critical access and basings that enable our forces to operate throughout the region. Taiwan, too, has made strides in strengthening its self-defense capabilities and is already spending about 3% of its GDP on defense. And like President Trump, the Taiwanese president is also proposing a special budget to bring their defense spending closer to 5% of GDP. I encourage their legislative body to pass that as soon as possible. The stakes are clear not only for Taiwan, but also for the United States. A cross-strait invasion would disrupt the global economy and enable China to dominate the Pacific and its key sea lanes to America's detriment. The time is now to strengthen Taiwan's defenses. I urge the Department to move quickly to execute congressionally appropriated funds for the Taiwan Security Cooperative Initiative. The recently announced $11 billion U.S. arms sales is a positive step, but we must make use of every available authority to arm Taiwan. That is consistent with the 2026 National Defense Strategy's call to build a strong denial defense along the first island chain. While China is our pacing challenge, North Korea remains a persistent threat and cannot be ignored. North Korea forces are gaining real-world combat experience fighting for Vladimir Putin against Ukraine. In return, Putin is giving Kim advanced technologies to greatly enhance his military capabilities. North Korea's advancing cyber, nuclear, and missile arsenals threaten both South Korea and the U.S. homeland. Therefore, I'm encouraged that South Korea is demonstrating a clear commitment to taking on significantly greater responsibility for its own defense. But that progress must not be undermined by a premature reduction of U.S. forces from the peninsula or a premature transition of wartime operational control. I want to thank our witnesses for being here and their service to our nation. I look forward to hearing how we can work together to ensure our warfighters have what they need to maintain stability and deterrence in the Indo-Pacific. With that, I yield to my friend, the ranking member, for any opening statement he may have.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Clearly, the Indo-Pacific and the Korean Peninsula are crucial to our national security and to peace and stability across the globe. I thank our witnesses for being here, and I thank them for their leadership in helping us meet that challenge. And I substantially agree with the Chairman's comments. One key to this is us maintaining a significant deterrent capability in the region, a capability that enables us to deter China from making any aggressive moves in the region and also to deter North Korea. Certainly a key part of that is the strength of our defenses. But I think an even bigger part of that is what the chairman mentioned at the end of his remarks, and that is the system of partners and alliances in the region that have been so crucial and that had been moving in a positive direction as they saw the threat from China and wanted our help. We need to maintain those relationships. We need to let those folks know that we are there and they can depend on us, and that the United States is, in fact, a partner that they can rely on. So I'd be very curious to hear from our witnesses how those relationships are going moving forward. Certainly a key part of this is also what the chairman referenced. We have to make Taiwan as strong as possible to deter China from thinking that they can reunify by force. That is to be a cornerstone of our policy. Yes, it is a one China policy, but it will never be reunified by force. The absolute key to that is making sure that Taiwan is strong enough to deter China from thinking that they can successfully carry out that operation. Certainly, the same is true when it comes to deterring North Korea. They threaten South Korea, but they threaten the region, and as the chairman has alluded to, given their involvement in Ukraine, they also are working more and more closely with China, with Russia, with Iran, as part of that group that is threatening our interests in a bunch of different places. So we need to deter them. I do believe that the bilateral relationship between China and the U.S. is the most important bilateral relationship in the world and will be for decades. So in addition to deterring them, I hope we find ways to have dialogue with them. I am deeply concerned that there is a lack of mill-to-mill conversations. I don't blame us for that. China has been very reluctant to have those conversations. But again, as the chairman mentioned, their massive military buildup, particularly in the nuclear area, demands that we be in a regular dialogue and conversation so that we better understand each other and can find a path forward to maintain peaceful relations. So I'll be very curious to hear your thoughts about how we can better communicate with China. I led a CODEL to China, the first one that had gone in like 5 or 6 years. I don't believe anyone's been back since. I think members of Congress need to get to China. I think the State Department certainly needs to get there, and we look forward to the President's conference coming up in, I think it's 2-3 weeks from now in China. I think that will be a crucial part of resetting the relationship. The other big problem in all of this, of course, is that the war in Iran has undermined every single one of those goals that we just laid out. Obviously, we are expending a lot of munitions and a lot of capability there, and the pie is the pie. If you're expending it somewhere, that undermines your ability to have it elsewhere. So do want to hear, and this is probably more for the classified session, but from both Admiral Paparo and General Brunson, how is this impacting our ability to maintain our deterrent capability in the region? And then an even bigger problem, to my mind, is how this has impacted our partnerships and alliances. We stumbled into this war, have no idea how to get out of it. Didn't have any idea how to get out of it when it started. We have even less of an idea today. The chaotic, plans that the president has been laying out in the last week, it's all over. They've agreed to everything. They've agreed to nothing. We're not talking. I will not extend the ceasefire. I will extending it forever. The message that sends to the world is that we are not a reliable partner. We don't know what we're doing. And then the worst part of it is the absolute contempt that the president has shown for the entire world, but certainly for Asia. He points out, look, it's not our problem, it's their problem. They're more dependent upon Gulf oil than we are. And that's true. It is true. The rest of the world is getting hit economically a lot harder by our stupid war of choice in the Middle East than we are. That's not something to brag about. If you want to try to build partnerships and alliances at a minimum, it's something to say, hey, sorry, how can we help, right? Is there something we can do to mitigate these damages? So the war in the Middle East is causing enormous problems, not just there, but in the Indo-Pacific as well. And it's something we're going to have to work really hard to try and fix as we go forward. With that, I look forward to the testimony from the witnesses and the questions, and I thank the chairman for holding the hearing, and I yield back.
I thank the ranking member. Just as a situational awareness, we're expecting votes at approximately 11:20. When votes are called, we will briefly recess before reconvening for open session. We'll come back, excuse me, take some more questions. Then about 12:50, we will recess or adjourn the open session, and 1 o'clock convene in the classified session. But we'll get as many members and their questions in before that time as possible. Now I'd like to introduce our witnesses. We have the Honorable John Noe, who is the Assistant Secretary of Defense for the Indo-Pacific Security Affairs. We have Admiral Paparo back with us, who is the Commander of U.S. Indo-Pacific Command, and General Brunson, who is Commander of United Nations Command, Combined Forces Command, and the United States Forces Korea. With that, Mr. Noe, we'll start with you for any opening statements you may have.
Chairman Rogers, Ranking Member Smith, and distinguished members of the committee, thank you for the opportunity to be here today to discuss how the Department of War is preserving a favorable balance of power in the Indo-Pacific and implementing President Trump's common sense, peace through strength agenda in this vital region. It is a distinct honor to speak with you alongside Admiral Paparo and General Brunson. Let me begin by reaffirming our clear mission as laid out in the 2026 National Defense Strategy. The Department of War will deter China through strength, not confrontation, and set the conditions for a favorable balance of power in the Indo-Pacific, in which no country, including China, can become a regional hegemon. This is not for the purpose of dominating or humiliating China. Rather, it is to defend our vital national interests in the Indo-Pacific and ensure that neither China nor anyone else can dominate us or our allies. We are clear-eyed about China's unprecedented military buildup, and it is our responsibility at the Department of War to ensure that the President is always negotiating from a position of unquestionable military strength to sustain peace in the Indo-Pacific. This requires, as the NDS clearly states, erecting a strong denial defense in the Indo-Pacific with a focus on the first island chain. We will accelerate efforts to strengthen U.S. force posture across the theater, to increase the joint forces' lethality and optionality, to deny aggression and, if necessary, prevail. This means ensuring we have combat-credible military forces postured forward, resilient basing and logistics networks, and advanced capabilities where we need them. The U.S. military cannot and should not alone sustain a favorable balance of power, which is fundamentally in our regional allies and partners' interests. The Department has called upon our allies and partners to expand their contributions to our collective defense and to share the burden of restoring and sustaining deterrence in the Indo-Pacific. We will work closely with them to bolster their readiness, enhance our interoperability, and revitalize our collective industrial bases. And we will count on the most wealthy and capable among them to meet the global standard of 3.5% defense spending and to take greater responsibility for their self-defense. The Secretary has made clear that America first does not mean America only or America alone. It means an America supported by and standing with a network of highly capable armed forces ready to defend our shared interests. This is what the Department and the team seated here before you today is delivering with the utmost urgency and focus. Thank you for your support and leadership and for the opportunity to testify before you today. I greatly appreciate your continued commitment to and support for the men and women of the Department of War. Thank you for your time, and I look forward to your questions.
Thank you, Mr. Noe. Admiral Paparo, you're up.
Good morning, Chairman, Ranking Member, and members of the committee. Thanks very much for the opportunity to speak with you today. I'll just call attention very briefly to Sergeant Major Cook and the other sergeants majors aligned behind me. His charge is the morale of the fighting force, that combination of physical, mental, and spiritual readiness that is at the heart of the joint force. And the enlisted and the non-commissioned officers are the heart, body, and soul of the joint force. I'd like to also acknowledge all of the tireless professionals arrayed behind us that help make today possible for us all. The Indo-Pacific is indeed the defining strategic theater in the 21st century, and it's where the four lines of effort of the National Defense Strategy converge: safeguarding the U.S. homeland, deterring China, deepening burden sharing with our allies and our partners, and supercharging the defense industrial base. Indo-PACOM strategy is clear: deter China from achieving its objectives through military aggression as we watch for the strategic cooperation among the Axis powers, not Axis powers, among the powers, China, Russia, North Korea, Iran, and terror groups. Deterrence is our highest duty. We deter with dynamic combat power, conducting operations every day across all domains. Our allies and partners increase our combat capability and capacity. They help expand the maneuver space, they extend our operational reach, and they strengthen deterrence. Just yesterday, we began the largest Bala-Katan exercise ever, shoulder to shoulder in Tagalog. This exercise demonstrates a significant leap in Allied firepower, integrating U.S. land-based Tomahawks with Philippine BrahMos missiles and Japanese anti-ship missiles. Our alliances are rapidly fielding advanced capability. We're adapting to the changing character of warfare by driving towards information and decision superiority. We're accelerating our decision-making through our AI-enhanced headquarters, strengthening our posture, improving integrated air and missile defenses, hardening key infrastructure, and increasing munitions throughput. The Congress and the Department have provided the resources. Now industry must deliver. And with your continued support, we'll preserve peace through strength, and we will defend a free and open Indo-Pacific. Thank you very much. I'm ready for questions.
Thank you, Admiral. General Brunson, you're recognized.
Chairman Rogers, Ranking Member Smith, and distinguished members of the committee, thank you for the opportunity to speak today alongside Admiral Paparo and ASW No regarding the security environment of the Republic of Korea in Northeast Asia. I extend my gratitude first to my staff, those arrayed behind me, who've helped me to get here today, and they represent the soldiers, the sailors, the airmen, the Marine, the Guardians, and all those who wish us well from Korea. I especially want to thank the Korean people for their continued partnership, hospitality, and commitment to our alliance. The Korean Peninsula is key strategic terrain, vital to defending the American homeland and advancing American interest in the region. Our forces in Korea are modernizing to address rapidly evolving strategic dilemmas. And that's why my focus remains strictly on capabilities over numbers. While our presence is a baseline, it's imperative that we maintain focus on the precise capabilities that must be resident on the peninsula. To truly understand this shift from capacity to capability, I encourage the committee to come to Korea, observe the Tri-Command firsthand. And should you visit us, you will see the readiness exemplified by our service members, civil servants, allies, and interagency partners who defend not only this homeland, but also Korea. Across the peninsula, our warfighters build readiness. And some recent examples include 8th U.S. Army and their training program, which enabled our Korea rotational force to exceed 90% in most categories of readiness. And the continued integration of our 7th Air Force, Marine Corps Forces Korea, Naval Forces Korea, Special Operations Command Korea, and Space Force Korea, components into U.S. Indo-Pacom exercises, demonstrate the potential to project power from Korea in support of deterrence across the greater Indo-Pacific. One thing I would like to mention as I go forward is our continued emphasis on things like a regional sustainment hub because of the importance of sustainment to the region. I would also mention the fact that as we continue to work across the information domain, we not only communicate the centrality of the region to American interest, but also actively maneuver to neutralize misinformation and disinformation. We'll make all the changes necessary in cyber, EW, and space to develop a competitive advantage which can be utilized from the peninsula. The Tri-Command, United Nations Command, Combined Forces Command, and U.S. Forces Korea stand ready and capable to support a favorable balance of power across the region. That balance deters aggression and supports a free and open Indo-Pacific. Our presence in the region is a driving force that has evolved our alliances over decades from dependencies to true partnerships. And while our cooperation and commitment in the region has maintained the armistice and deterred large-scale conflict, our forces must remain vigilant. Together with the Department, our interagency teams, the United States Congress, and our multinational allies and partners, we will continue to demonstrate American strength in the region so that a favorable peace prevails. Under one flag, we go together, fight tonight, kachi kapshida. I look forward to your questions.
I thank the witnesses and recognize myself for question. I'd like to start with both Admiral Paparo and General Brunson, would you each of you take a couple of minutes and share with us how you see our partners in the Indo-Pacific supporting U.S. security interest in the region? Start with you, Admiral.
Morning, Chairman. First, indispensable to our success in the theater in deterring conflict, and most supportive just in the expansion of our exercise programs, the expansion of our more creative solutions on access, basing, and overflight. An example is Balikatan. Presently, right now, it's the premier exercise for the mutual defense of the Philippines. It means shoulder to shoulder. Japan is participating for the very first time in Balikatan, actively participating in an exercise that exercises the self-defense of the Philippines. And so across the theater, through all of our exercises, and I could name through a laundry list of what they are, the extent to which we are expanding into new fighting positions in order to meet our mutual defense obligations. We're expanding the jointness and the range of the exercises, bringing in more partners into minilateral and multilateral exercises. It's really inspiring.
Great. General?
Thank you, Chairman. I would say much the same, but what I would add to that is their continued modernization of their forces allow us to do other things. And as you know, with OPCON transfer, what we're looking at is maybe taking a look westward while also providing critical but more limited support to the North Korea mission. And I think we're able to do that as these forces continue to modernize and act in partnership with other nations within the region to participate in exercises. RIMPAC, which is coming up soon, will see Korea lead for the first time a multinational maritime effort. We were just at Cobra Gold recently, and the Korean participation there was the largest ever. And as we continue to open ourselves up to these multilateral opportunities that exist across the region, I think that makes things better for us in terms of human, procedural, and technological interoperability, which is absolutely necessary to maintain the peace in the region.
Great. Thank you. Mr. No, Congress has provided authorities and funding to support Taiwan's security and self-defense. And in FY27, we're proposing increasing that with the Taiwan Security Cooperation Initiative and Drawdown Authority. Why has the administration not been drawing down the funds it has more rapidly?
Mr. Chairman, first of all, thank you for your personal support on these important Taiwan security assistance initiatives, including TSCI, which you just mentioned. The department has multiple tools at our disposal to provide security assistance to Taiwan. FMS, PDA, TSCI. We're actively working to present options to our leadership, including for Secretary Hegseth and the President, on different ways to provide security assistance to Taiwan, and we'll continue to do so.
Okay. General Brunson, the United States and South Korea agreed to a conditions-related capabilities security environment and must be met, that it must be met before wartime operational control can be transferred to South Korea. How's that going?
Chairman, I'll give you more detail in closed based on some of the critical capabilities that need to be discussed. But I would say that right now we've delivered to OSW a roadmap, which will get us there not later than second quarter of FY29. And we'll continue to pursue that. As you know, Chairman, we have the Korea Integrated Defense Dialogue that's upcoming, where a great many of these conditions will be discussed. We've also got the military consultative meeting and the security consultative meeting, which are also coming up to be held here in D.C. Early in the fall. But I think that right now where we stand based on the continued investments by the Republic of Korea in their defense, really an uplift of about 8.5% in their defense spending over the next 3 FY, I think that we're in a good position, but there's still more work to be done. And as you said, we will continue to press for the conditions-based OPCON transfer and ensure that all the conditions are met.
And that's the point I hope that we keep in the fore of our mind, is that until those conditions are met, we do not need to be premature in transferring that operational control. With that, I yield to my friend, the ranking member.
Thank you. Actually, the chairman hit on the first question I was going to ask. So just follow up a little bit about sort of South Korean capability to meet the threat from North Korea. If you could give a few more details about, and I think you covered it fairly well, but timeline-wise, is there a point you see where South Korea can get there? We talked a little bit about some of the logistical challenges. I mean, aside from just having the forces and the munitions, being able to organize, how do you assess South Korea's capability and how critical it is that we continue to partner with them?
Chairman, Ranking Member Smith, thank you for the question. One of the things that I look at is when you look at the 10 largest armies in the world, South Korea is one of those, and they're sitting at 5th right now. So mass has a quality all its own. So that would be reason number one as an infantry officer that I would say it's important that we continue to partner. I also think that geography plays into this as well, the centrality of Korea in the region, its ability to impose costs both in the West Sea and the East Sea. When I look at their forces, what I'm most pleased with is the continued growth of their defense industry and the potential that exists for them to accelerate so that they can secure the capabilities that are absolutely necessary for OPCON transfer. As a partner, I would consider them, and maybe it's because of where I live, the preeminent partner in the region because I get to work and see them every day. So very happy with the relationship that we have. As you know, we just came out of our Freedom Shield exercise, which is a command post exercise largely, but there were 50 individual events where bilateral training occurred. In the future, we want to continue to wrap the UN command into this exercise, that we might have a multilateral aperture to operate from as well. But as a partner, very pleased with them, sir.
Yeah, and you don't see a point anytime soon when the splitting and us leaving would make sense.
No, sir, I would not offer that as my best military advice or advice writ large that I would give to any of my leadership.
Thank you. And Admiral Papar, as I mentioned in my opening statements, the impact of the war in the Middle East has been felt much more profoundly in Asia than it has here. It's not widely reported. As you talk with your partners, what sort of conversations do we have with them about how to mitigate the impacts? I mean, there are significant fuel, fertilizer shortages. Is that impacting the flexibility, the ability of these nations to continue to work with us, or more crucially, to continue to keep their distance from China?
Ranking Member, we've taken some entrepreneurial approaches to some of the force elements that have been allocated to the U.S. Central Command area responsibility, and notably Balakatan is an example, and we'll have some other elements where we drive some more creativity in the process so that we can maintain the exercise objectives. And our allies and partners have made some important shifts in order to continue to support our military exercises thus far. We've not gotten into the detail on the larger fuel implications for each individual partner nation, but it's something that we're watching about the flow of energy into the Indo-Pacific, the linkage of economics to security, and we're keeping a close eye on it.
Yeah. But for now, you say it hasn't yet impacted like some of the joint operations you're talking about. I mean, I would think they would have to be scrambling at least a little bit to figure out how to allocate scarce fuel resources.
Yeah, in some cases we've used units that were we have deployed a few units to substitute for capability that would be in the area of responsibility. We've not yet had to make hard fuel choices that have affected our ability to do exercises, but it'll be an issue of concern moving forward.
Thank you. And Mr. No, what are your expectations for the President's summit? What are we looking to accomplish and to come out of that summit, I think May 14th coming up? What do we want to get out of that conversation?
Ranking Member Smith, as you stated in your opening statement, Department of War supports engagements with China. I was personally present along with Admiral Paparo when Secretary Hegseth met with Admiral Dong Jun in Malaysia a few months ago. I know Undersecretary Colby's engaged with Ambassador Xie Fang several times, and at working levels, policies continue to engage with our counterparts in Beijing. So we're supportive of that, and we're fully supportive of the President's desire to maintain a positive, productive relationship with Xi Jinping.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Gentleman from Virginia, Mr. Whitman is recognized.
Thank our witnesses for joining us today. Admiral Paparo, I want to begin with you. You had heard a little bit about the issues we're dealing with. That is the tyranny of distance there, what you have to deal with every day in the Indo-Pacific. And then weapons magazine depth, especially long-range precision strike weapons like Tomahawk, Prism, JASSM, LRASM, you name it, we need those weapons. The challenge is we've consumed those weapons in other ways, and as weapons magazines get precariously low, we need capacity and capability to be able to reconstitute those weapons magazine. And you've said this, you've said current production timelines are misaligned with operational expenditures and threats we face today in today's global security environment, essentially saying we're not building enough fast enough. Secretary Feinberg would agree with you and has done a lot of things there. Looking too at what's happening right now, it's not just those exquisite weapons, but it's also attritables and expendables. It's also being able to take technology that's there, things like the Lucas drone that we've been able to use in ways using technology that's already out there from, believe it or not, places like Iran, and getting that capability there. To be able to do that quickly, to be able to produce that mass that does have an impact is going to be key going forward. So I just wanted to get from you, how are you working not only on the exquisite weapons magazine depth, but also building that mass, that attritable and expendable mass quickly so that the Chinese look at it and go, you know, even though they may be able to hold us at risk and the WES gets bigger and bigger and bigger, we've got some things too that are going to really make their risk calculus very complex. Give me your perspective on how you're trying to balance all those things, restocking exquisites, but also building quickly a magazine depth for attritables and expendables.
Congressman, good morning.
Good morning.
You get to exactly the crux of the changing character of warfare. On arrival at U.S. Indo-Pacific Command, I inadvertently coined the phrase hellscape as an operation. It wasn't quite so inadvertent, but and this is something that I strongly believe. I think we see it every single day in Ukraine in this changing character warfare, the commoditization of cheap, distributed precision kill. And this is a technology that we embrace or we lose.
Right.
And I think this is absolutely critical, and especially in a denial defense where we need not fight for air or maritime superiority of a space. We need only deny it to an adversary who wishes to change the status quo with assault warfare. Learning the lessons of Ukraine, learning the lessons here in the operation in the Middle East are critically important. And so Lucas is showing promise, MIROPS is showing promise. The budget has a historic investment in unmanned and autonomous capabilities. And the Indo-Pacific, in my view, is space one, where it's the first theater where we must have the concepts in order to do it. There is a concept, as you well know. It is achievable rapidly on the timelines that we have discussed, and accelerating that is really important. Also includes low-cost hypersonics as well, and the department is making investments in low-cost hypersonics and low-cost cruise missiles, because what we're also seeing is that 90% of the capability frequently results in 10% of the actual cost. And while we need exquisite to take down exquisite things, we need cheap to take out less exquisite things. And the department is making those investments, including in the traditional defense industrial base. And as discussed, we must perform. Forgive me for the overly long answer.
No, listen, great perspective there. Let me ask this too. In the theater, it's not just having that offensive capability, but it's also about logistics, about support, about the ability to react and interoperate within that theater. We know the Marine Corps has LSM coming on board to be able to move Marines and equipment around. But give me your perspective too, because Army watercraft through the years have played a very, very important part of that. Tell me, how do we need Army watercraft in your theater, and what do we need to do to make sure we're putting as much focus there as we are with LSM?
Yeah, Congressman, ships are the world's most effective means to move mass material and people over long distances. And if you're not doing sustainment, you ain't fighting.
Yeah.
You know, maybe the most important joint function, and arguably the joint function that won the Second World War over the vast spaces of the Indo-Pacific.
Gentleman's time's expired. Chair now recognizes the gentleman from Connecticut, Mr. Courtney.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Admiral Paparo, last year, the AUKUS security agreement went through an intensive review by the Department of Defense, which last October concluded that it was in America's national security interest to maintain its commitment to that program. When you testified last year before the committee, you forcefully stated that AUKUS provides a critical strategic benefit for all three countries having forward rotation of submarines in terms of both presence and readiness. Having read the AUKUS report from cover to cover, I am pretty clear. It was pretty clear to me that your well-informed opinion had a decisive impact on the final verdict of the AUKUS review. So here we are a year later. Maybe you could just sort of talk about what you see happening in terms of, joint operations, joint crewing, and how it's progressing.
Yeah. Good morning, sir. Well, one is that HMAS Sterling is on track for the rotational force that will arrive here in Perth, in a little over a year. And I stated yesterday, too, is that between the pier, the shore power, the facilities with a tender and a marine security company, we could be ready today to operate a submarine squadron, a rotational submarine squadron out of Australia tomorrow. The Australian submariners are performing well on the ships. They're performing well in the schools, extremely well. And in every regard, in Pillar 1, we're on track. We're making strides in Pillar 2 among these non-traditional systems here. And to have a rotational base in the Indian Ocean is absolutely essential. My view is that the AUKUS review didn't reflect my opinion. It reflected the facts. It was affirmed in the report, and I'm glad that my opinion was vindicated.
There's no question having your sort of reality-based presence and your opinion definitely, I think, carried a lot of weight. So, in the last month or so, I think our country and certainly the Congress has sort of rediscovered the importance of minesweepers. I guess what I would ask you is that in your area of command, is there also a need for minesweepers to be sort of part of a fleet?
Yes, sir. We have 3 minesweepers assigned. We have MH-60 minesweeping helicopters assigned in the Indo-Pacific AOR. Everybody is investing in mines. Mines is a sea denial capability, and at points in a conflict, you're going to have to open up what's called Q routes to restore commerce. And so minesweeping is a critical naval capability that we've got to invest in, and so do our allies and partners.
Thank you. Again, looking at our fleet as it stands today, again, we've got some Avenger classes, just a couple left, and then LCS with the modules there. We have a pretty big budget that we're going to be taking up. Auxiliary ships are finally getting sort of their day in the sunshine, but I think it's something that we need to sort of examine just how well LCSs are performing that function and whether or not really the Navy needs to sort of maybe look at some other sort of options.
And it's also, minesweeping is the ideal mission set for autonomous systems also. And so as we think about standoff motherships that deploy autonomous systems to clear Q routes, these are all areas for innovation. But my dedication to the mission set of minesweeping remains unbroken.
Right. Thank you. I yield back.
The gentleman from Georgia, Mr. Scott's recognized.
Thank you, Chairman. Gentlemen, thank you all for being here today. For years, I'm one of those that have believed that China would choose economic influence over direct military conflict with regard to Taiwan. As we've seen in the recent news, Taiwan's opposition leader met with Chinese President Xi, resulting in flights being restored, reopening tourism channels, easing of agricultural trade, and widening cultural access between the two nations. Admiral Paparo, in November of 2023, former chairman of the Joint Chiefs, General C.Q. Brown, who I have tremendous respect for, stated that Xi Jinping may seek to achieve objectives against Taiwan without using force. Do you agree with this assessment?
Yes, sir.
In your judgment, what are the primary non-kinetic pathways China could use to achieve control over Taiwan short of an invasion?
Sir, these, first of all, united front operation, information operations, to sway public opinion, to distort the truth, to separate citizens from their government. These are efforts. It's an ongoing, continuous effort, not just in Taiwan, but all throughout the Asia-Pacific, in fact, all throughout the world, on the record for that. Certain lawfare actions, a quarantine that sets new customs entities backed up by law enforcement type forces like Maritime Security Administration, China Coast Guard. These are all contingencies that we plan very deeply. And then up that ladder into the low kinetic, small island seizures and other demonstrations, from quarantine to near blockade to blockade, are all other means by which they could potentially coerce with force or near force their objectives. And that is the preferred route for the People's Republic of China.
A blockade against the islands on the mainland side of the straits, there's nothing anybody can do about that short of all-out war. Is that a fair statement?
I think gray zone must be met with gray zone, direct
I agree.
and indirect. And we ignore that missionary at our peril.
Well, I'm going to ask my next question, which I think you've just answered. In your judgment, is the United States over-focused on invasion scenarios at the expense of those alternative approaches?
Well, I don't think we're over-focused, because we must always be planning for the worst-case scenario. But I will tell you that we need all of government solutions to account for all of government solutions from the People's Republic of China.
I think in many areas we've focused too much on the kinetic and not enough on the gray. I think we've done that in Africa, and we've lost Africa to the Russians and the Chinese because of not paying attention to social media and the other things, the disinformation campaigns that they've done. General Brunson, I did notice not in your written bio, but your dad was a sergeant major. If I'm not, I bet you weren't late for dinner, were you?
Oh, not at all, and I appreciate you saying that. I know he and my mother are watching this right now.
Well, I'm sure she is an exceptional lady to be able to keep a sergeant major in line. She would have to be. But congratulations on your success as a four-star. I have tremendous respect for all of you who achieved that rank, and I mean that, Admiral, to you as well. You too, Secretary. Before I get to the question, I will say this. I think the firing of General George was an extreme disservice to the United States Army. And I think it was reckless conduct, and I don't think many of us, let me say it this way, some of us are not through asking the questions about that. I don't expect any of you to answer. But how are China and Russia's relationship affecting the stability on the peninsula, and what changes have you seen since you have been there?
Congressman, thank you for the question. What I would say is, if you would imagine an Oreo, and you say China's the cookie part, and Russia's the other cookie part, and DPRK's in the middle. So now you've got this salient that's been created of cooperation amongst, these authoritarian colluders. That's changed the region significantly. It's changed it by way of the way that North Korea gets materiel that they then use to pressure South Korea. I think it changes the way that they develop weapon systems, because it's coming either from east of them or west of them. The connectivity across those three nations is something that we can't belie. We've got to pay attention to this, because it changes the way that North Korea acts.
Gentleman's time's expired. Chair, and I recognize the gentleman from California, Mr. Garamendi.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Admiral Paparo, in your final comments to Mr. Whitney about the Pacific, you entered the discussion about resupply, about how we can maintain the position of the United States, and you also brought up World War II, where it was perhaps one of the most critical issues in the Pacific. It's a very, very big ocean. The U.S. Navy is not going to be able, even with the extraordinary increase in its budget, to provide the necessary support vessels. And we're developing, under the leadership of Mr. Trent Kelly, a proposal that is now maturing with the administration on a maritime strategy, commercial maritime, that could be the answer to the support that would be necessary in the Pacific. I don't know that I expect you to comment on it extensively, other than to highlight the potential problems. An extended conflict in the Pacific, we simply cannot sustain that. The issue of tankers was raised in conjunction with the fuel situation, but that fuel's got to go on something, and that would be a tanker. We don't have them. We could, using the advanced opportunities that are presented in the Ships Act, develop a domestic maritime tanker fleet that could be available, as it was in the early days of World War II, to support the military. We'll be moving that along later today and in the days ahead, but I would like you to comment on the potential support that could come from an expanded commercial maritime fleet if we were able to develop it in the United States. Right now, we don't, but we could.
Congressman Garamendi, we already have extensive agreements in the volunteer tanker program with maritime shippers, and so it's a proven concept. And as you say, I think it's the closest, strongest capability that we're going to get in order to close the tyranny of distance and the physics of energy, mass, and people across 8,000 miles of the Pacific. I associate myself very strongly with your statement and am supportive of the initiative.
Thank you very much. It would be useful as we proceed with the Ships Act to have some detail about what is needed. As you see it, it's a shifting mosaic out there. And the other thing I do want to get into is the essential role of our allies. Both of you have spoke to that issue. Our allies are working closely with both of you on the military side. The political side is not so good. There are significant problems that have been developed, tariffs for one, and other, and Joe talked to the issue of AUKUS. Could you wade into something that is important but not your principal subject matter? How is it going on the political side? Admiral?
Sir, I think our Pacific allies have been extremely circumspect, stoical, moving forward, treasuring the relationship and pragmatically working together towards solutions. And though our mill-to-mill relationships are always on an upward trajectory and are a counterweight to the peaks and valleys of political discourse, I credit our Indo-Pacific allies on their stoicism and their problem-solving approach.
Thank you. General?
Sir, I would say that by virtue of process alone and the procedures that we follow, they're intricately wound together, the two. I won't speak to the politics, but when you look at things like the Security Consultative Meeting, that goes to the Secretariat level where those meetings will take place, which involve us. Recent appointment of an ambassador to the Republic of Korea also helps. So the military allows us time and space for those other relationships to continue to develop and mature.
I'll just close by those political relationships are ultimately as important as the military. And so we should be paying attention to that as we go about our work. I'll yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Chair, and I recognize the gentleman from Tennessee, Dr. Desjardins.
Thank you, Chairman. I appreciate all of our witnesses for being here today. Admiral Paparo, I would like to start with you. Based on the three incredibly and complex, successful operations recently carried out by the United States military, have you sensed any change in China's posture, behavior, and calculation in terms of risk associated with getting an engagement with the United States? And to put it more briefly, does this make them want to expedite or to delay?
Congressman, I think that the operational success achieved by the Joint Force has demonstrated capability and has enhanced the deterrence of the United States of America. And I think it's made the People's Republic of China more cautious moving forward through the demonstration of capability and will.
Thank you. And I think you and I share a common belief in the importance of space. You've mentioned it in your opening statement, and I couldn't agree more. But we all know that space and information superiority will be the key to winning the wars of the future. How can this committee work to ensure we have space dominance in light of our adversaries, China, Russia, North Korea, developing space and counterspace capabilities?
Congressman, cyber and space counterspace is the very first battle of any conflict, and it will be in the 21st century. That underpins the ability of a military to see, understand, decide, and act. And in fact, for China, we've seen the proliferation of their constellation over the last 6 years go from 250 to over 1,100 military satellites, including counterspace capabilities. So this is the #1 priority for United States Indo-Pacific Command, is counter C5ISR&T, counterintelligence, surveillance, reconnaissance, and targeting. And the space portfolio is the #1 funding priority that's submitted in our 12XX, 13XX reports. And so I'm very grateful for the committee's work on that.
Thank you. General Brunson, as we're all aware, North Korea is continuing to develop and test new weapon systems, including the unveiling of a new submarine platform, escalating activity around their nuclear development sites, and of course, Sunday's ballistic missile test. How have these test developments impacted your command?
Congressman, one of the ways that it's impacted the command is we're continuing to try to shore up our ability to see, sense, and understand as these launches happen. Over the past year, or really since January of 2025, there have been 61 total launches. 37 of those have been cruise missiles, and I believe 23 have been other ballistic forms that they've shot. And I would suffice it to say that what we're also trying to do is ensure that the trilateral cooperation in terms of integrated air and missile defense and ballistic missile defense is continuing to stay sharp. And so what we really want to try to do in the future, you heard Admiral Paparo mention C5ISR&T. That's both blue and green as we look at the red. And so what we want to do is try to ensure that these pathways that connect us together with our allies in the region are absolutely sound in the event that they become degraded over time.
How concerned are you about the increased cooperation between North Korea, Russia, and China? We talk about the axis of evil. Iran seemed to be part of that. No one seems to be rushing too fast in their defense, but how has that also impacted your calculations?
It's impacted because it changes the capabilities that are resident within the primary adversary for U.S. Forces Korea today, and that's deterring DPRK. In close, I look forward to letting you know some of the things that we've discovered recently that give us great alarm in terms of the sharing of TTP across that salient that I spoke about earlier. Poor analogy with the Oreo, but that cookie that exists out there is absolutely dangerous to us right now, and it's continuing to develop in quick time.
Okay. I'll yield back, Chairman.
Ms. Strickland is recognized.
Thank you, Chairman Rogers and Ranking Member Smith, and thank you to our witnesses for being here today and your continued service. I represent Joint Base Lewis-McChord, where forces like First Corps and the Multi-Domain Task Force are directly tied to the Indo-Pacific. The 2026 National Defense Strategy emphasizes deterrence by denial, but deterrence only works if it's credible in the near term, not just in future force design. So I want to focus my questions on whether we are positioned today to meet that standard. Admiral Paparo, I'm going to move over so I can make eye contact with you. Representing JBLM, where First Corps and the Multi-Domain Task Force are directly tied to the Indo-Pacific mission, at an unclassified level, do you believe that U.S. forces today are postured to maintain credible deterrence against China in the near term?
I do believe that we're postured correctly, and but a very important element of that, and this is particular with regard to JBLM, among other locations in the western United States, is the mobility of forces to move, and that mobility is underpinned by air and maritime capability that can rapidly move forces.
All right, and maybe I've answered my follow-up. The top 1 or 2 capability areas where additional progress is most needed now.
Well, I've talked about the changing character of warfare, and so munitions is counter C5ISR and munitions is critically important, but sustainment And sustainment includes the ability to deploy, the ability to phase. That's a key area for improvement. And that is maritime vessels, including Army watercraft. That is cargo aircraft. That's tanker aircraft, really across the whole spectrum.
Thank you, sir. Now moving on to General Brunson. Roughly 28,500 U.S. service members are stationed in the Republic of Korea, with many serving 2 to 3 year tours in support of one of our most visible forward deterrence missions, including personnel who support operations tied to the DMZ. Given your operational experience and leadership on the Korean Peninsula, how do you assess the readiness of the combined U.S. ROK force today to deter aggression from North Korea?
Congresswoman Strickland, thank you for the question. I would assess us having just exercised this formation in February as being prepared to deter.
Thank you. Mr. No, deterrence is not only about military capability, but also about the strength and alignment of our alliances. So I'd like to turn to you on this point. In the 2026 National Defense Strategy, it calls for stronger contributions from allies and partners in the Indo-Pacific. To ensure our alliances remain strong and aligned, what clear expectations has the Department of Defense communicated to our allies and partners regarding the capabilities, investments, or contributions needed to strengthen collective deterrence? And how's the department assessing whether those efforts are producing the intended deterrent effect?
Congresswoman, thank you for your question. As I said in my opening statement, reestablishing deterrence in the Indo-Pacific is not a task that America can or ought to do on its own. So the role of our allies and partners is absolutely essential and critical. We have been building strong relationships, and I'd be happy to go into each and every one of them, but with allies and partners throughout the region. We have been asking wealthy and capable allies to step up, including with spending. President Trump made a historic achievement last year at the NATO Hague Summit in getting NATO countries to increase their core defense spending to 3.5% of their GDP. That is the global standard, as the NSS and the NDS both clearly lay out. We are asking our allies and partners to do that, to increase spending and to meet the global standard. And we're seeing progress. Republic of Korea a couple months ago became the first non-NATO ally to commit to increasing spending to 3.5% of their GDP. And as the chairman mentioned, Taiwan is also taking significant steps to increase its spending. So we're seeing progress across the board, and we'll continue to push our allies and partners to do their part.
Where's Japan as far as their spending?
Japan is in the process of revising its 3 national security defense strategy documents. We're in constant communication with our Japanese counterparts, allies, on this issue, and we look forward to seeing progress on this front.
Gentlelady from Washington's time has expired. Chair, I recognize the gentleman from Mississippi, Mr. Kelly.
General Brunson, I also want to commend you on having a sergeant major for a father. I have a first sergeant for a father who's passed and a brother who was a command sergeant major. And as an officer, I don't know how to act right, but I do know what right looks like.
I find myself well associated with those comments.
You know, and that being said, I see sergeant major and senior enlisted leaders there on the back row. And the strength of the American military, which is why China or Russia or Iran or any other of our enemies will never be on the same par with us, is because of the skill of our NCO Corps and the professionalism that has existed for decades. And we are a strong military because of the greatest NCO Corps in the history of the world. Agreed?
Agreed.
Admiral Papara, I want to thank all you witnesses for being here, but for you, as we look to the Indo-Pacific, where the stakes for long-term competition are highest, we're also managing real-time demands in other regions of the world. This puts a premium on readiness, responsiveness, and strong partnerships. The strategy is clear. We want to deter conflict while competing effectively every day. I'm particularly interested in how we are to respond in the early hours of crisis and whether our forward forces are positioned and available to do that. And Admiral Papara, as part of the President's budget, the Navy has requested a significant increase in ship procurement in line with the President's Golden Fleet Initiative. The Navy's plan includes new classes of ships like the LSM for the Marine Corps, a new class of frigate, a new battleship. How will these new classes of ships enable you and future Indo-PACOM commanders to deter China and, if necessary, defeat them in war?
Sir, good morning. Thank you. Indeed, is that ships exist, warships exist to move energy, mass, and people across long distances, and there's no substitute for it. So I'm strongly in support of each of these new classes, the battleship, the frigate, the LSM, along with accelerating the other classes of ships across the Navy's plan in Golden Fleet for America, also including the initiatives on increasing our maintenance capability and then increasing the nation's overall maritime manufacturing power. And there's just absolutely no substitute for it. And as a quick example, in the last 18 months, China has delivered 12 submarines, including an SSBN. They've delivered 7 frigates, 8 destroyers, 2 cruisers, 3 amphib, and 3 combat logistics force ships, and an aircraft carrier in just the last 18 months. They do so to command the sea, and we've got to meet that challenge as we have in the past.
I had a question from a reporter yesterday asking me about what I thought about the Golden Fleet and the battleships and all that. And listen, it's still something that's maturing in process. But the bottom line, the investment of billions into that program on the left end still is still, whether it's in a carrier, whether it's in a destroyer, or whether it's in the new battleship, but still is still. So the procurement of all those things left of build is still important regardless. And what I know is our infrastructure here in America, which is why I have the Ships of America Act with Mr. Garamendi and members of the Senate, it's important that we invest. If we're going to be a maritime nation, it means we have to build ships, we have to train sailors, both civilian and military. How important is it, logistics, in a place like the Pacific, which is so far to get? How important are refuelers, both on the sea and in the air, to your mission?
I can talk to you in classified hearing about just how much tonnage and how many millions of pounds of jet fuel must be airborne at any given time. But it's a sine qua non, a without which not for combat success.
And regardless of the type of ships, and this applies to you too, General Brunson, you're kind of on a peninsula there in the far reaches of the world. It matters that we have tonnage in the water. Regardless of what that tonnage consists of, there is a high value just in the quality and quantity of ships that we have on the sea, whether manned or unmanned. Is that correct, Admiral
concur.
Paparo? All right. With that, I yield back, Mr. Chairman.
Gentleman yields back. Chairman recognizes the gentleman from California, Mr. Carbajal.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you to all the witnesses for being here today. The 2025 National Security Strategy states, President Trump is building alliances and strengthening partnerships in the Indo-Pacific that will be the bedrock of security and prosperity long into the future. Mr. No, do you think the constant barrage of on-again, off-again tariffs coming from this administration are helping to strengthen partnerships in the Indo-Pacific? A simple yes or no.
Congressman, I can speak from personal experience. We have and continue to maintain the strongest relationships with all our allies and partners throughout the region. What was your question?
Do you think the constant barrage of on-again, off-again tariffs coming from this administration are helping to strengthen partnerships in the Indo-Pacific?
Again, I'll say from personal...
It's okay. I'll move on. Over the last year or so, our soft power has diminished significantly, and a big part of that is due to the gutting of USAID under DOGE. While Congress worked to restore some of this funding, most programs did not come back to previous levels. This includes programs in several Southeast Asian countries. Mr. No, one more time, was there ever any concern that cutting foreign aid to key countries in the Indo-Pacific would help position China as a viable alternative to the United States?
Congressman, State Department is in the lead on issues of foreign aid, so I would refer your question to the State Department.
Thank you. We have a massive foreign military sales FMS issue, which is being worsened by the war of choice in Iran. One stark example are the 66 F-16s Taiwan purchased back in 2019. Delivery was supposed to begin in 2023, but just recently the first two aircraft were formally accepted. But these are not in Taiwan and not available to be used in conflict yet. Admiral Paparo, how important is it that capabilities purchased through FMS be delivered on schedule? And do you think Taiwan would benefit by having these F-16s now?
Congressman, there are problems in our FMS programs. I think the department is working really hard on fixing some of those problems. I think the State Department's working really hard on fixing those State Departments. Integrated air and missile defense is going to be absolutely critical. That is across all domains, and that includes, and it's also across all zones of conflict. And so I think it's important that every FMS delivery is delivered not just on time, but early.
Thank you. Admiral Paparo, in your testimony before this committee last year, you underscored the rapid advancement of China's military capabilities, including its growing investments in space and counter-space systems. I understand that the commercial remote sensing industry has played a critical role in supporting the COCOMs to ensure that our warfighters have access to persistent, real-time, actionable data. However, the department's budget, once again, does not reflect that important partnership. Can you discuss the importance of continued investments in commercial solutions to meet operational requirements? And how could expanded access improve domain awareness in your AOR?
Thank you, Congressman. The persistent commercial capability so greatly augments our unique and exquisite on-orbit capability. And the mass data analytics of multiple inputs provides a precision all its own. I think it adds resiliency, it adds to the constancy of the picture, getting us closer to a stare than a blink. And we're working with a number of commercial companies in order to bring those on board, and we continue to advocate for those investments.
Thank you very much. Mr. Chair, I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Chair, I recognize the gentleman from Nebraska, Mr. Bacon.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for being here, gentlemen. We appreciate you. I have 4 questions. I'm going to try to get right to the point. Admiral Paparo, the Air Force is increasing its requirement for B-21s from 100, and now we're looking at about 140 or 145. How good a news is that for you for your war plans and deterrence?
Congressman, that's very good news, and I welcome even better news if we're able to do it.
Okay, that's good. I like that. Secondly, I flew in the Compass Call aircraft for 11 years, the EC-130s. It's transitioning to the EA-37s. When I came in 10 years ago, we had 6. It's the program of record. And through digging up under couch cushions and scraping and tugging and pulling, and with the support of the chairman, we got it to 12. And I think we got 3 more in the upcoming budget. Now, I understand the requirement from PACOM is 22. So can you talk about the importance of the EA-37? Because I'm blessed to have a good committee that supports this, but I'd like to know how important it is to you.
Congressman, there's dozens of systems that contribute to our counter C5ISR&T, military speak for counterintelligence, surveillance, reconnaissance, and targeting. EA-37 Compass Call is a critical linchpin in that through all zones of conflict, through the gray zone into high-end conflict. So we're strongly supportive of that capability, as well as all of the other capabilities on orbit, on the surface, and in the air that contribute to our ability to execute the counter C5ISR&T mission and build out our intel pictures.
Mr. Chairman, we're getting us to 15 on this budget. We're getting close to the PACOM requirement, and I'm excited about that. Joe Brunson, we're listening to news about some of the air defenses being moved out of Korea to the Middle East. Can you talk, is this impacting you, or are you feel adequately covered right now?
No impacts to our ongoing missions and operations, Congressman.
Okay. Admiral Paparo, how far behind are we with military sales to Taiwan? Because I'm concerned about deterrence. We don't want a war, but if they have adequate sea mines, anti-shipping missiles, air and missile defense, China's less likely to attack, so this is so important for deterrence.
Sir, if I may, I'll talk to you in closed session on that.
Okay. One last question. I'll get a 5th one in, because you guys they're concise today. How are we doing with building rapport and relationship with India, the largest democracy on this planet?
Well, I was there last month visited Chandigarh in Punjab state. I was in Delhi and in Bangalore as well. And it is a really key emphasis. The mill-to-mill relationship particularly is on an upward trajectory. The mean of the relationship between the United States is on a upward trajectory. It is one of my most visited partners. It is one of my most communicated with mill-to-mill partners in General Neil Chauhan, and it is absolutely a priority.
Yeah, this is a game-changing trend that we can build on. Okay, one more question, something I asked your predecessor 4 or 5 years ago. You know, if you go to Europe, it's a lot of multilateral relationships, NATO. But if you go to the Pacific theater, it's a lot of bilateral relationships with Hawaii sort of in the middle of the hub. Would we be better served if we tried to foster more multilateral, where Japan's got relationships with Australia, and you got, you know, would it be stronger, or is we're just too early for that yet?
Well, Congressman, I think we're in the middle of this now in our Quad relationship. That's U.S., Japan, India, Australia. In our Defense Cooperation Council between Australia, Republic of the Philippines, Japan, United States. In the Korea, Japan, U.S. trilat. In the United States as a comprehensive strategic partner to ASEAN and a member of the 80mm plus. You know, all over we see these multilaterals are getting richer. They're getting bigger all of the time. It's happening organically, and it's really exciting.
Thank you. Again, I thank all three of you for your leadership. And Mr. Chairman, I'll give you back 40 seconds.
You're awesome. All right, just for situational awareness, we've been called for votes, so we're going to get Mr. Keating in, and after that, we will recess until after votes. But with that, the gentleman from Massachusetts is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to deal with China's engagement with Russia in terms of its strengthening Moscow's ability to sustain itself in the war in Ukraine. You know, it's obvious that their imports of Russian oil and natural gas is helping in terms of revenue with Russia, so they can sustain the effort. And also, their exports of dual-use goods and technology that really help them sustain the defense production as well. Do you want to comment on China's activity with Russia?
Congressman, on top of being the key critical market for their energy, China provides 90% of the semiconductors that power Russia's war machine and 70% of the machine tools that powers Russia's war machine. That connection is real. It's right before our very eyes, and it's deeply concerning.
Yeah. You know, there's been many retired military and pundits, if you will, talking about the fact that our strategic goal in the Indo-Pacific, and particularly with China, is deterrence. And the U.S. actions, their comments, as well as mine, are the deterrence factors weakened by the U.S. lack of commitment to Ukraine, particularly its actions with NATO. I mean, just calling NATO, you know, freeloaders, calling NATO pathetic, calling them recently paper tigers, saying their troops were in the back of the line for our confrontation, even though they were there under Article 5, the only time it was initiated. I mean, when you're looking at that effect of Ukraine with China and the U.S. Actions around Ukraine, doesn't that weaken our deterrence as China's looking at it with Taiwan in particular? That's just not my feeling. I think it's a majority of people more people that are retired from the military than current military in that regard. So I don't want to get you into policy before you had to, but it seems to me that's clear. Perhaps you could answer it, Mr. No. Let's leave the military out of that policy issue for now.
Congressman, I think the relationships we're building with our allies and partners speak for themselves. I think our activities, our posture, what Indo-PACOM is doing with its OAIs, I think they speak for themselves. So no, I don't think there's been any kind of erosion of deterrence in the Indo-Pacific.
Well, you must admit, you're saying speak for themselves. That's just a free sampling of what I've had about what the Secretary of Defense or the President has said about our NATO allies. I think they speak for themselves. So isn't that something, that kind of fractured relationship, doesn't that hurt us with our deterrent posture in the Indo-Pacific and China? You don't think so?
Congressman, we're doing everything we can in close coordination with Indo-Pacom and USFK, with Admiral Paparo and General Brunson to make sure.
I'm not concerned
posture-
about the military cooperation, sir. I'm concerned about the Commander-in-Chief and the Secretary and their comments as it affects that deterrent effect.
Sir, the department will always make sure we're ready to respond to any kind of contingency and that we're able to deter any threat in the Indo-Pacific.
So I'll give you one more chance. So the actions we've taken in Ukraine, pulling back, and the language and the fracturing of our NATO alliance, I didn't even mention trying to invade a NATO country like Denmark through Greenland, but that affects the deterrent posture of the U.S. when they see that fracturing, because one of our greatest strengths has been the coalition we've had, the global coalition, particularly with NATO. So how does that not hurt the deterrent effect that the U.S. poses on China when that's weakened by the statements of our top people,
Sir,
including the President and the Secretary of Defense?
Sir, our deterrence posture in the Indo-Pacific is strong, and we'll make sure it stays that way.
You repeated yourself. I just think that that's something that has really hurt us. Hurt us globally, but particularly hurt us in the Indo-Pacific. I yield back, Mr. Chairman.
Gentleman yields back. We will now recess until approximately 11:55 to 12. And thank you. You got a break. All right, let's go ahead and get started while members filter back. We apologize it took longer than we expected. There was another committee that could not make it to the floor in time, and it held us up. But we're back now. Huh? All right, so we will now recognize the gentleman from Guam, Mr. Moylan, for 5 minutes for his questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you to our panel here today. I appreciate all our interest in Indo-Pacom, especially with my home on Guam. I also want to thank my good colleague, Joe Wilson, who has been a strong advocate for the islands as well. Admiral Paparo, I appreciate all your support for Guam, and I know you have the nation's best interests in hand for our defense, being the most western soil that we have. One of my biggest longstanding requests for Indo-Pacom has been expanding our investments in Guam's power grid, which is largely still owned by the War Department. And I've been advocated for the use of authorities under 10 U.S.C. 2815 to underground more of our power lines to ensure the grid can meet Department of War's growing demands for electricity. So what do you view as the best path for DOW to support Guam Power Authority in expanding infrastructure and meeting military requirements?
Congressman, good afternoon. Thank you. You're well aware of how important shore power is to Naval Base Guam, and that is to get high-fidelity, reliable power, shore power, to the submarine squadron that's there. And the overall resilience of Guam, which is so important to our nation's defense, is so important to us at U.S. Indo-Pacific Command. And on all the things that we're cooperating on the hospitals, on the building out of critical infrastructure, there are direct defense benefits to that. And so not just for the reliable shore power that provides power to Naval Base, but to the entire island. You can count on my complete support for that infrastructure, also the critical infrastructure that supports Guam defense system, which is also so very critical.
I thank you for that. And as we experienced in this last storm, the utilities and bringing them back up, and those winds weren't as bad, but the storm just stayed for 3 days, and the high surf and all made a big difference. So working with Department of War, helping with our finance to complete the power requirements that we need will be excellent. I thank you for your support on that. In addition, let's talk about our civilian employees, that are Department of Defense employees, their living quarter allowance. As we know, we have high expenses on Guam, and the employees hired off island do have LQA. The employees hired from Guam do not, and end up going to the mainland to get that additional funding. So we did include the LQA in the recent NDAA. I'm just wondering when would this be implemented?
I'll have to get back with you on when it's implemented, but I do want to express my support for it. Guam is one of those locations where cost of living, including cost of housing, is so expensive. We're trying to relieve some of that cost of housing with our own construction of on-base housing facilities to take the pressure off. But for our civilian employees, ensuring that their compensation meets their living expenses so we can continue to attract and sustain the best civilian workforce is essential. And I'll work with you on that, and I'll get back to you on the time frame.
Thank you, sir. And lastly, you mentioned our medical facilities. We just don't have enough. If conflict does happen, we don't have enough at all. And if conflict doesn't happen, with all the troops coming on in, our pediatric ward is not capable, right? We're hoping people will have a good time and wanting to start their families on Guam. That would be terrific. So we need that support, especially with our hospitals. Our Navy hospital is way too small. It wasn't meant to be built for that. And our civilians' hospitals don't have the capacity. So if you can ensure that we can, with GPA, also our hospital gets assistance, please.
That I will, sir. And Governor Liu, my dear friend, and I are in lockstep on the civilian hospital in Guam, as well as to continue the personnel enhancements to Naval Hospital Guam. And I'll also add the enhancements that we've made for medical at Camp Blas as well. But all of it's critical for our defense. Thank you.
Thank you to the panel. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Gentleman yields back. Chair, and I recognize the gentleman from Colorado, Mr. Crow.
I yield my 5 minutes to the gentleman from California, Congressman Tran.
Thank you so much to my friend and colleague, Representative Crow, for yielding. Thank you, Chairman Rogers, Ranking Member Smith, and thank you to all of the witnesses for being here today. Next Thursday, April 30th, marks the 51st anniversary of Black April and the fall of Saigon. As the son of Vietnamese refugees, I know how imperative it is to recognize this solemn day. That history is a prime example of why this committee and this Congress should be focused on the Indo-Pacific. I also represent Joint Forces Training Base in Los Alamitos, a mission-critical base for the Pacific. So I think it's fair to say that my community and I understand better than most that deterring the Chinese Communist Party's aggression, expansion, and influence has to be the #1 priority of the Department of Defense, which is why it is also concerning that there are reports stating that resources from the Indo-Pacific are being transferred to the Middle East to support the administration's war of choice in Iran, a war that's claimed the lives of 13 service members. General Brunson, is it true that resources from the U.S. Forces Korea have been redirected to the Middle East?
Congressman, thank you for the question. I would prefer to answer that question in closed.
I appreciate that, and I will follow up in a closed session. In the event with our resources being sent to the Middle East, Admiral Paparo, how has the movement of resources put our soldiers and interests in the Indo-Pacific at risk?
Along with my good friend General Brunson, I'd like to talk about that in closed session. We do have forces that are operating in the Middle East, and we do expect the return of those resources. We've taken entrepreneurial approaches to maintain our program of exercises. We do maintain a combat-ready reserve. The military is always in the action of controlling for risk, and we can get deeper into the individual movements when we are in closed session. But I'll also say that those forces in the Indo-Pacific are experiencing combat, and there's no substitute for combat, and there will be direct applicability to the Indo-Pacific.
I appreciate that, Admiral. And, our military has been asked to do a lot this year with multiple conflicts and operations across the world. If this keeps up for too long, such a high demand could actually undermine our military readiness rather than improve it. We're already seeing the USS Ford on track to break the longest deployment for an aircraft carrier since the Vietnam War. Admiral Paparo, from your perspective, are we approaching a point where the demand on our troop is degrading our readiness?
Congressman, there are finite limits to the employment of the gear where it's got to go back for maintenance availabilities. I've not yet seen where depot-level maintenance has been affected for our aircraft or ship availability has been affected for our ships. I've not seen that, particularly in the Indo-Pacific. It is something that we keep an eye on, and then, I've got a strong dialogue with the department on ensuring that the department is aware of what the risks are. At this time, there's not been a degradation of readiness at this time.
Appreciate that. And General Brunson, what are your thoughts on the forces within the Korean Peninsula?
Congressman, thank you for the question, and this I can't answer right now. And I would tell you that what we have in a model ally in Korea is simply this. About 20% of the cost of stationing forces forward is borne by the Koreans. And that through the Special Measures Agreement, which takes into account about $500 million in terms of what would be MILCON that the Department of War would have to bear, which they don't have to bear because that's paid for by the Korean, the ROC-funded construction. We also get about an 85% blessing in terms of salaries, which for our KGS wage employees that support our command in theater. That's borne by the Koreans. So 85% of the salaries paid by the Republic of Korea, we only bear the cost of 15%. And so the Special Measures Agreement lowers the cost to include logistics sharing, which supports and sustains our commands across from construction materials to energy and the like. So the forces that are stationed are well positioned at less cost than others who are placed forward OCONUS.
I thank you three very much for being here, and I ran out of time. So, Chairman, I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Chair, and I recognize the gentleman from Virginia, Mr. McGuire.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you to our witnesses and to all of our military and veterans here. We really appreciate what you're doing to keep our country safe. Just want to thank our witnesses and everybody for your service, and thank you for being here. Admiral, you talked about using AI to make decisions, and without getting into anything classified, what are some of the examples of things that you would use AI to make decisions for?
So at the tactical level, the application of AI for swarming drones, the ability to optimize a force against another force at the tactical level is an AI force in employment, down to make fewer weapons at mass be more effective against more targets. At the operational level, as you're linking joint function, command and control, intelligence, information, movement maneuver, fires, sustainment, protection, and security, the ability to link those so that you are optimizing the force so that a fires decision also leads to the right kind of sustainment decision for reload, and making those processes that can sometimes be in a stovepipe as accurate as possible is also one of the ways in which we're employing AI. And then at the strategic level, to understand, given sensitive intelligence, the behavior on the battlefield, to better understand the adversary's strategy, what their next moves are, the second, the third, and the fourth move. So at all three levels, tactical, operational, and strategic, the employment of small AI and machine learning models at the tactical level, LLMs and agentic models, so that every decision is AI enhanced, so that machines are making the kind of mathematical decisions that machines can make, and humans are making the kind of decisions that we must.
Maybe more accurate.
Yes.
Mr. No, we've heard significant autonomous and unmanned systems requirements for the Indo-Pacific theater. What is your mechanism for ensuring that DOW acquisition and policy strategies are actually aligned with those operational needs?
Congressman, as you know, reforming our acquisition system is a priority for Secretary Hegseth. This is an issue that policy works closely with our colleagues at Acquisition and Sustainment, and we'll continue to do so to make sure we have the best acquisition system possible.
Admiral, there are significant unmanned surface vessels in the President's budget for next year. You've been a proponent of USVs for a while. Have you developed a concept of operations for use of those USVs and how you will integrate them into manned fleet operations?
We have, sir, and I'd like to give you more detail in a closed session.
Sounds good. And then, Admiral Papiro, during your appearance last year, we talked about how small modular reactors might transform the ability to deliver energy to our forces and across your AOR. How would you leverage a Project Pele scale deployable reactor in the first and second islands chains?
Sir, yeah, this availability of power would potentially supersede our need for fuel. And so having small modular reactors that can deliver reliable power in a distributed fashion, I think is just going to make us more resilient from a sustainment standpoint. It's going to drive down our costs, and then the cost of what it takes to gain the battle space to move that fuel. And so, I'm strongly supportive of these measures.
As a Navy SEAL veteran, I understand how effective a small, agile unit can be. Do you have what you need in Indo-PACOM? And if not, what can we do to help you?
Well, I think I'll say this, is that I'm never satisfied with what we have, because the bill at the end is the loss of people, capability, money, and time and conflict. But I will say that our 1313, or rather 1251 this year report, shows no unfunded requirements given the budget submission this year.
And Admiral, could you describe how you view advanced and additive manufacturing being utilized through the PIR?
Yeah, Piper is a really important initiative for us to gain this resilience. And additive manufacturing, this is advanced manufacturing, better metallurgy, faster, on demand, and local. And so this is the future, is AI-enabled advanced additive manufacturing. There are numerous companies in the United States that are mastering this right now and getting the technical community to approve of the methods and to approve in advance these advanced parts forward is going to be critical for this.
Thank you. I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Chair, and I recognize the gentleman from Massachusetts, Mr. Moulton.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. To all of you sitting up there, when you signed up to serve, many of you a long time ago, I imagine your vision of service was not this, sitting in a hearing room. It's nonetheless important, so thank you for doing this work. Dr. No, President Trump has talked a lot about his burgeoning relationship with China. Do you think that President Biden or President Trump is stronger on China?
Congressman, I think President Trump's record on China speaks for itself. If you look at what the Department of War has been doing for the past year plus, in terms of our posture, in terms of being ready to deter any adversary, and if necessary, responding to any crisis or contingency, I think the record speaks for itself.
So do you think it was a good idea for him to give in to China and sell them all the AI chips that not only the Biden administration, but the first Trump administration had prevented them from buying?
Sir, on the issue of chips, the Department of Commerce is in lead on that issue. And
I'm just asking you, do you have an opinion?
I would refer your questions regarding chips to the Commerce Department.
I can ask the Commerce Department. I'm asking your opinion. You are supposedly in charge of deterrence here. Do you think that was helpful for deterrence?
Congressman, we're doing everything we can to make sure our deterrence posture...
Really? Because I think if you were stopping the chip sales, that would help. And I know there's a lot of bipartisan agreement on that. What about the fact that China is holding rare earth minerals over our head? They weren't doing that in the Biden administration. Do you think that's a helpful development?
Congressman, we have very important discussions with our allies and partners on the issue of critical minerals and rare earths. I do think it's in our interest to have more secure supply chains for critical minerals and rare earths.
Well, I would agree. I think China's put us in a bind here. What do you think about the fact that people refer to President Trump as the taco president because of the way he gave in on tariffs? He put huge tariffs on China, and then when he felt some pain at home, he gave in. Do you think that helps deterrence?
Congressman, I'll repeat what I said earlier, which is the Department of War is doing everything it can to make sure our deterrence posture is in the strongest place possible.
So if you're doing everything you can, do you think that the national security strategy, the national defense strategy, do you think they do a sufficient job of deterring China from a military confrontation with Taiwan when conspicuously and clearly intentionally they entirely omit any mention of Taiwan in the document, which is certainly not the case in the Biden administration?
Sir, I will point out the arms sale that was announced a few months ago under this administration of $11 billion was the largest in history
You're right, it was announced. But what confidence can you give us that the president won't chicken out on that as well? Because it seems like every step of the way, he announces something that might go against China or deter China or put pressure on China, and then he always chickens out and gives in to China.
Sir, I think the $11 billion in arms sales speaks for itself.
No, it has not been sold. It's been proposed. What confidence do you have that that deal will actually go through? What confidence can you give us?
So you're right. Taiwan also needs to do its part. The Taiwan LY is currently going through a process of passing what could potentially be a historic special defense
Why is the
budget.
president so non-committal when it comes to defending Taiwan? He said, I don't want to be put in that position. Whereas President Biden was pretty explicit that we will defend Taiwan. That's probably the strongest way you can deter China from attacking Taiwan.
Sir, I think strategic ambiguity is a policy that has worked for decades. It preserves the president's decision space. I don't know how helpful it is to publicly state our intentions of what would happen in the event of a Chinese invasion. Again, strategic ambiguity has worked, and I fully support it.
Admiral Paparo, how long will it take to regain the force posture that we enjoyed in your Indo-Pacific AOR prior to February 28th, 2026, when we had to divert a lot of munitions to Iran?
So I'll answer that question in closed session. I'm really supportive of supercharging the defense industrial base, and I'm also very supportive of non-traditional weapon sets that will continue to augment and affect the changing character of warfare.
I am too. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield back.
Chair, and I recognize the gentleman from Texas, Mr. Gooden.
Admiral Paparo, yesterday you testified that Bitcoin held potential as a tool for national security. Recent research from the Bitcoin Policy Institute estimates China has approximately 194,000 Bitcoins, while the United States has approximately 328,000 Bitcoins. In this era of digital competition, would it be to our strategic advantage to maintain a lead in this regard as we do with other strategic resources like gold and oil?
Sir, our interest in Bitcoin is as a tool of cryptography, a blockchain, and reusable proof of work as an additional tool to secure networks and to project power. And so I think this protocol is here to stay. I think the computer science of it has direct implications for the projection of power, not financial, but from a computer science standpoint, from the securing of networks. And so I am supportive of those applications. All instruments of national power are important, but from the military application standpoint, my interest in Bitcoin is as a computer science tool as projection of power.
I appreciate that. I agree with you. And I'd also like to hear your thoughts on monetary competition over the coming decades. What role does Bitcoin play in spreading digital property rights?
Well, people use Bitcoin today, right now, to protect their own intellectual property. And that's the reusable proof of work protocol that's combined with blockchain for accountability and cryptography for security. And so that's the role that I see for it. I see direct national security implications, and then I'm supportive for anything that maintains our own dollar dominance worldwide.
I appreciate that. Do you think we're adequately prepared to counter China's strategic direction regarding digital assets?
I think that our recent act with the Genius Act is a great step forward that moves us in that direction.
And lastly, I'll ask you, as we continue to craft the NDAA, what authorities and resources does Indo-PACOM need to address as respects the national security dimensions of digital assets?
Presently, we're in experimentation, so I'll give you a deeper look into that. Presently, we have a node on the Bitcoin network right now. We're not mining Bitcoin. We're using it to monitor, and we're doing a number of operational tests to secure and protect networks using the Bitcoin protocol.
I appreciate that, Admiral. Thank you. I yield back, Mr. Chairman.
Gentleman yields back. Chair, I recognize the gentlelady from California, Ms. Jacobs.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Admiral Paparo, General Brunson, nice to see you both again. I first want to ask about civilian harm mitigation efforts. Over the past year, Secretary Hegseth has made significant cuts to personnel and institutional roles responsible for civilian harm mitigation and response, saying there will be quote, no stupid rules of engagement, end quote. Mr. No, how many Indo-PACOM personnel are currently assigned full-time to civilian harm mitigation issues, and what are their specific roles and responsibilities within the command?
Congresswoman, I'll have to take that answer back.
Okay, I'll look forward to getting an answer from you. Admiral Paparo, from a commander's perspective, what operational and institutional risks does the loss of dedicated civilian harm expertise create for Indo-PACOM's overall preparedness? And specifically, how does that risk calculus change when you factor in the prospect of large-scale, high-tempo conflict in the Indo-Pacific region?
Congresswoman, I'll say that following the laws of armed conflict, which are ancient to a great extent and eternal, and also guarantees that our would-be adversaries also follow the laws of armed conflict, is a matter of first principles for everyone in uniform, including the civilians that work. I think the mitigation of civilian harm in conflict is a matter of first duty for everyone who works in the DoD, and we're always going to work really hard to ensure that our actions are right, just, proportional, all in accordance with the laws of armed conflict.
Yes, well, and I very much appreciate that, and I know that our folks in uniform take this very seriously. I guess what I'm trying to figure out is, in the absence of a sort of standing institutionalized civilian harm capacity at the command, could you maybe walk me through, like, how would Indo-PACOM manage civilian harm mitigation assessment and response? Who would be responsible, and what gaps would immediately become apparent if conflict were to begin in the Indo-Pacific tomorrow?
I'll say commanders are always accountable. Commanders have the accountability, the responsibility, and the authority, and I am accountable to the country, to the committee, for all civilian harm mitigation, for executing our combat operations within the laws of armed conflict. We use all of our targeting capability with our collateral damage estimates. We do so within our planning processes, and then with our staff judge advocate force, which includes civilian and military. This is always front of mind.
Yeah. Okay, I appreciate that. If you need anything from us to make sure that you have the actual capacity you need to do this, please let us know, because this is a priority for the committee and has been in a bipartisan way.
Thank you, Congressman.
Yep. I actually want to follow up on something you said to my colleague, Mr. McGuire, and some of the things you said in SASC yesterday around sort of the use of AI and especially this kind of idea of the tactical swarming and cheap expendable munitions deployed in mass with AI tools. I want to ask in particular how that would work in the Taiwan Strait, for instance. So it's one of the most heavily trafficked civilian maritime corridors, commercial shipping, fishing fleets, et cetera, et cetera. And a strategy of mass AI-enabled low-cost autonomous kill capability deployed across that space, probably in the opening hours of a contingency likely. In your planning, how would you distinguish a PLA Navy amphibious assault vessel from a Taiwanese civilian fishing vessel or a commercial container ship in the AI-enabled targeting system that would command this?
The first, and I think this is, kind of the rules of unmanned and the rules of drone warfare, is that you strive generally to not send a human being to do a dangerous thing that a machine can do.
Absolutely.
And number two, you never lose human accountability for taking lives in offensive operations or defensive operations. And I'm accountable. I'm the commander, and I'm accountable for that. So having human oversight over this operation, it's not necessarily a person in the loop, but is a person on the loop that can stop something. The assurance of packages before they go forward, maritime domain awareness, so that you do know, setting conditions ahead of the conflict with notices to mariners. These are all the wide range of measures that we take place to ensure that our actions are completely in accordance with the laws of armed conflict and wise strategically.
Well, thank you. Thank you both for your service. Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Gentlelady yields back. Chair, and I recognize the gentleman from Texas, Mr. Luttrell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Admiral General, Mr. Secretary, thank you all, and everyone else in the room warning you. Thank you for your service. I mean that wholeheartedly. The ultimate sacrifices that you and your family go through every single day. So God bless each and every one of you. Off-grid power generation, Admiral. Can we do a little bit deeper dive as far as we can go inside this current setting? I just want to make sure that in the NDAA or anything that's coming after that you are very well funded and that we're pushing the envelope hard enough for any kind of contingency that may populate in this AOR.
Yes, sir. This off-grid power generation, this is the deployable generators, all the things that deliver power so that we can execute all the joint functions. Critically important, a part of our sustainment. We've got to be thinking about all classes of supply, and energy supply is critically important within that. And I think that this is inherent within our plans. And so,
are we prepared to move in a shorter period of time? And are you in your? I'm not going to ask you if you have a warm and fuzzy. That would be weird. But are you inside your comfort zone of what currently exists? And I would guess, is the department moving?
I think first is that I'm not going to put a troop in harm's way without all the things that they need to be able to live and succeed and survive and sustain. And so I'm very comfortable that within our plans, our forces are well planned across all categories of supply, and we've got that ability to sustain. It's the resilience of it that I worry about, and I think we have to be restless and always working towards good solutions.
You mentioned I think you said low-cost hypersonic capabilities.
Yes, sir.
And doing my homework, and one of your major concerns is hypersonics.
That's right.
Are we in the right setting for? I want to ask you this question again in the next in the classified setting, but one of my major concerns is our capability in the hypersonic space and speed ratios. But
we're working with a number of innovative companies that have the capability to provide low-cost, seeker-enabled hypersonic weapons at a fraction of the cost of some of the programs of record. And we've got to take risk on this. We got to take risk in putting them on contracts so that they can scale. We have to take risk in this in giving them the authority to operate quickly. We'll be experimenting this summer with live fire on this.
Okay. This is more of a request, sir. I think this kind of understanding of hypersonics and the importance of it is lost in translation inside this place. There's a few of us really paying attention to it. But as you as the subject matter expert, or the one that's on top of this, and everyone else engage with the members kind of in a deeper dive of why we should be focusing on this, if you would please, sir.
If your weapon travels at Mach 1 and you're actioning a moving target, or you're actioning a target that is fleeting, and that target is Mach 1, that sounds fast. Let's say that you're shooting that weapon at 1,200 miles. If you're moving at Mach 1, over the 2 hours, things on the battlefield there could change in the 2 hours that it takes a Mach 1 weapon to close 1,200 miles. If your weapon is traveling at Mach 10, then that 2 hours is compressed to 12 minutes. And that's the difference. It's the ability to see, understand, decide, act, and hit your enemy before your enemy can hit you.
I'm gonna borrow that one from you if you don't mind.
You've spent a life.
Claim that one as my own if you're okay with that.
You've spent a life shooting, moving, communicating. The faster you're moving, the faster you're shooting, and the faster your round hits home, the better. And speed is the advantage of the 21st century. Speed in compute, speed in decision making, speed of engagement.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Chairman yields back. Chair, I recognize the gentleman from New York, Mr. Ryan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you all for being here. Agree with both what you said, Admiral Paparo, that your AOR is, quote, the defining strategic theater. What you said, Mr. No, in referencing the NDS, that we have to deter China through strength, and that you said we're doing everything we can. My concern, building on comments from colleagues, is that what's happening in the CENTCOM AOR is a direct undercutting of that ability to show our strength and then, in effect, deliver the deterrence we all agree that we need. In the first 4 weeks of primarily in the first 4 weeks of the war, we expended tremendous numbers of long-range missiles, 1,000 plus JASSMs, which is 20% of our stockpile, 850 plus Tomahawks, more than 30% of our stockpile. As many in the room know, we produce 80 Tomahawks a year. That's 10 years worth of at our current rate of production stockpile used in 4 weeks. We know for air defense munitions, half of both our THAAD and Patriot interceptors expended in that time period. As you've briefed, Admiral, these are critical munitions on day one of potential contingencies in your AOR, and they were low even before the Operation Epic Fury. In 2025, in fact, the administration said it couldn't provide Ukraine with Tomahawks because they were needed rightly in Indo-Pacom. And then in 2024, Admiral, you talked about, at that moment, your dissatisfaction with magazine depth, which, to the chair's credit, everybody in this room, we've been working to address. And I'm not dismissing that, but the reality of where we are now is important. That builds on the fact that beyond the munitions, Iranian missile and drone strikes have hit U.S. bases across the Middle East and shown a lot of capability that we knew was coming, but even more threat from that. And then, of course, as other colleagues have mentioned, the readiness impacts of using over 40% of our deployed Navy ships in the war after them just coming from the Western Hemisphere for Venezuela. So I, along with many others, are worried about, one, the position it puts us in, and you ultimately and your folks in Indo-Pacom. Two, what message it sends to China, as other colleagues have said, and ultimately what it means for our ability to deter and, if necessary, defeat action. So Assistant Secretary No, looking at all this, munitions burn rate, readiness strain, base vulnerability, how can you say, as you just said, we're doing everything we can in the Department of War to deter?
Congressman, as Secretary Hegseth has said, the department has sufficient munitions to address any task at hand, including those that may arise in the Indo-Pacom AOR. So we will continue to work closely with Admiral Paparo and the entire Indo-Pacom team to make sure we're postured.
And you can deliver that with a straight face, that there's been, you really honestly believe that? I would point folks to independent public source, open source research from CSIS, other leading think tanks, nonpartisan, highly trusted. These impacts are real. And if we don't acknowledge that and be honest about it, how can we say we're doing right by our folks? Admiral Paparo, I know this is uncomfortable. I get it, and I want to hear in the classified setting, but I think the American people deserve to understand that decisions that are made, by the way, with no input from Congress, have real immediate operational impacts.
Congressman, I'd say the way ahead is tripling, quadrupling the production rate of these munitions. And then number two, finding suitable, innovative, non-traditional substitutes for them, which in some cases, with the right innovation, can exceed that capability. That's the way forward.
And we are all working on that in good faith, but that doesn't take away from the immediate impacts. And the timelines that you've briefed to us and that others have put out there, that we are quickly coming upon that, and we just mathematically are concerned about that. And to be clear, I am rooting for us, and we are all rooting for us, but solving this problem starts with an honest reckoning. General, do you want to add anything on that?
What I would add, Congressman, would be simply this, that you know the state of our stores prior to any of this happening. You understand the PDs that have been given to us to support operations globally before this, and that we've really got to get to the beginning of this, which is what do we need, how is industry helping us get there, and then look for some of these other creative avenues to pursue to solve some of our problems. Admiral Paparo has talked at length, ad nauseum almost, about some of these cheaper alternatives that we have. We need to run full force at some of those things and solve our own problems, as opposed to going back to getting old dodix, old forms of engagement, and really start to work to solve our problems, sir.
Agree. Thank you, and I yield back, Mr. Chair.
All right, we are now, we were going to end at that, but we're going to go to Mr. Kuda for questions, and then after that, we will adjourn the public hearing. We'll go to the classified hearings, and we will start back on the itinerary of members as if we stayed in public session. So those members who are up next, starting with Mr. Fallon, will be recognized in the classified session before we go back to members who have already had a chance to ask questions. So those staff members back in their offices if you're waiting for your member to get the questions, make sure they understand that they're going to be first up when we get in a classified session. With that, the gentlelady from Hawaii, Mr. Kuda, is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Admiral Paparo, as you know, this morning's headlines in the Advertiser read, Pacific Chief hopes for consensus on Hawaii land leases. A very general question. Do you think that we can reach any kind of consensus with the threat of condemnation hanging on in the air?
Aloha, Congresswoman.
Aloha.
I am confident that we together can find a solution. I think all parties understand the critical status of Pohakaloa training area, as well as all the other training lands and important land issues. And I am confident that we can find a solution that's acceptable
I know
to all.
you're confident, and I know you're committed, but I also know you're not the key one negotiating right now. So my basic question is, can there be any kind of consensus reached if condemnation continues to be the threat? In my humble opinion, this is coercion. This is not consensus that we're talking about. A simple yes or no. Shouldn't condemnation be taken off the table in order for us to have a real solid negotiation as to these lease lands?
I think finding a consensus solution is important, and it's above my pay grade. These terms.
Understand. I know, but I think you'll agree from your
our relationships within Hawaii are really critical for the operation of the Joint Force, and it's our home.
Absolutely. I think the only person who's come before me right here to be able to talk about Pohakaloa, you're the only one who actually lives in Hawaii. So you know exactly what's at stakes. You know exactly what we mean. The lands in question, though, let's take it a slightly different direction that hopefully you can help me. The lands in question are former Crown lands, public trust lands that the Admissions Act dedicated to the benefit of Native Hawaiians. These are ceded lands. They're held in trust. Knowing this, who needs to be at that negotiation table in order for us to seek this consensus, this positive resolution that you'd like to see?
Understood. Members of the community and my own dedication to the Native Hawaiian community, and so all parties with a stake should be a part of the process.
Do you think
Must
Native Hawaiians have been at the table? Do you think their voices, their perspectives, their historical trauma, has that been at the table? Has that been part of the negotiations?
I know that U.S. Army Pacific is very respectful of those traditions.
Very respectful. Well, have they been at the table? Who's party to the negotiations? Have Native Hawaiians their voice? Entities, including but not limited to the Office of Hawaiian Affairs, that has a constitutional responsibility to these lands and to at the table? Should they be at the table?
I'm sorry, I'm not a party to the negotiation, as you well know.
But knowing what you know living in Hawaii, knowing the importance of making sure people are not just present, but they're engaged, their perspectives are actually heard and included, do you feel from everything you've seen so far, and most of that is just what we read in the newspaper, do you feel Native Hawaiian voices, their shared history, their connection to the Aina, do you think that that has been a part of anything we've seen so far in relation to the lease negotiations?
I think we can work harder at it.
Absolutely. I think we have to do a lot better.
Thank you.
Simpler question. PTA is stolen land. Can we agree on that? I mean, even if we take a look at the area in question for the leasehold, the vast majority of the land being bombed right now was taken as a result of the illegal overthrow and the Admissions Act. Can we agree that we are talking about right now stolen land? Yes or no?
Are you asking me? I'm not going to answer that.
Okay.
That's beyond my remit.
So do you think we paid anything for over 2/3 of the land that you're bombing right now at PTA? How much do we pay for that? Nothing. And for the small portion that we are engaging with now, that I want to remove the threat of condemnation for, that I would like to see a real robust renegotiation with real advocates, real beneficiaries sitting at the table, their rights, their perspectives, their views, their history shared and part of an agreement. Do you not think that they should be at the table given that vast majority of PTA, Pohakaloa training area, is stolen land? The rest of it, you paid $1 over the last 65 years. Should they not be at the table?
I think it's important that we reach a consensus approach, Congresswoman.
Can
and
we
you know I
agree
do.
that Native Hawaiians were never there and never asked in the first place whether or not they felt okay giving their crown lands to the federal government, to the United States, to be bombed by the military? Can we agree that Native Hawaiians never gave their consent? They never gave up their authority, their sovereignty, their claims to these lands?
Gentlelady's time's expired. I appreciate Mr.
Thank
Fallon
you, Mr.
accommodating that audible call. This concludes the open portion of our hearing. We are going to adjourn now to reconvene at 1:10 in room 2212.